I'd like to ask a very simple question. How many of you here have Twitter accounts, blogger accounts, and all that? Okay. How much of your day is spent uploading or status updating? Like 1/5, 1/10 perhaps? I don't know. Okay. The premise behind what I'm about to show you stems from the virtue of being lazy. Okay? If you think about it, laziness is the ultimate state of efficiency. If you can do something with minimal effort, laziness is a good thing. Of course, you have to work for it then, and that's why I built this thing. So I'm going to tell you the story of how this thing came about. My whole premise is to actually figure out the best way to merge my virtual and real-world selves together with as little effort as possible. It all started back in Buffalo. I moved as a city person from Singapore, where there's all kinds of stuff happening, to this strange, desolate place. Okay, there are warm people there, there are nice people there, but it can get cold and desolate. And over there, it felt as if it was perfect for me because, in a sense, a lot of us, I think, are very ADD in today's context. We are very attention deficit, right? And what's interesting over there is that I learned that it felt very much like a monastery. I could experience what solitude was, and it's something that I couldn't experience over here in Singapore. And that, in a way, led me to explore this journey into myself and what it really means, what my identity is, what it really means to be you without anybody around. That is not to say that I wasn't connected online. What happens online, my virtual world, my online world, is very different from what happens in my real world. The amount of interactions I get online is so much higher than it is in the real world context that sometimes I felt as if my virtual self was superseding my real world self. And so I needed to figure out a way to close this gap. I tried to rationalize it on a napkin, of course, and we talk about things like feedback loops. I put in all this communication theory that I picked up and try to figure out what is this notion of self then, all right? And the simplest way to explain it, really, is if you were to look at Esther's drawing hands. Because what's interesting in this case here is that you have two hands drawing each other, but you cannot have one hand drawing itself. That is to say, self is reflexive. Playing on that notion, we start to see how real world and virtual world start to synchronize much faster. They reconfigure one another in very startling ways. And it starts to become mimetic memes, in a sense. You see these protests start to replicate across cities because it works. The architecture is very simple. We've reached that stage where replication can occur very fast. So I seek to explore that notion in a personal context, in an individual context. In today's world, we experience this through our mobile phones, our smartphones, and all that. And we use very low bandwidth methods of doing that. We have things like Twitter, we might use photographs, and it's all in little pulses, little bursts. I was trying to figure out if we can step it up to the next level. What happens if you could automatically take what I'm experiencing right now in front of this stage and just project it online? What would then happen in terms of relationship between me and my friends who might be checking in on me online? I don't have to say so much. They could experience what I experienced and literally live my life vicariously. So I wanted to explore that. I'm not a programmer. I'm not an engineer. I had to figure out what's the simplest way. Of course, I get inspired by these notions of cyborg-isms and all that. We have this notion of flying cars that should have happened in the year 2000. Where are the cyborgs? All these questions start to inspire us and make us think about what's really possible out there. There are people out there like Steve Mann. He used to be from MIT, and he moved to University of Toronto, who, as you can see, the progression of how he actually developed his outfit, you can see that he has become more and more transparent with his cyborg-ism. You don't really see so much of it anymore versus what I have today. Okay? So I started to go into this venture more like around 2007, where this whole internet bubble, Web 2.0 concept came about. We had ideas of crowdsourcing. We had this data valence culture where we're crazy about tracking every paste that we make so that we can put it on Nike.com and compete with one another and all that. So this whole concept of data valence started to really create this wave. And I was very interested in that because with cloud computing and all those buzzwords, we have infinite storage capacity, we have wearable sensors all over, and wireless networks everywhere, even through our cell phones. So it becomes almost natural that we start to exploit in various ways. Okay? So I did what all researchers do. We go shopping, and I start acquiring stuff that I could get off the shelf because I'm not somebody who does engineering and all that. I had to figure out how to piece my stuff together. So what you see here is GPS receiver. You see like a UMPC, like a netbook might work too. A little webcam here, wireless LAN, battery packs, of course, and of course a digital video recorder. Just to give you a little idea, this thing here is a webcam. It goes to a UMPC, it broadcasts it live. This one here goes to a hard drive so that I can record my experiences and memories forever, supposedly. And this is a new little toy that just sends it to my iPhone so I can save it and send clips if I want. Okay? So this is how I started to piece it together. Basically, there were a lot of concerns, of course, things like energy, power. How do we make sure that there's enough to last a day? Currently, this backpack that you see here will last about 5 hours with the external batteries, and then we have the solar panels there if I'm outdoors a lot to try and compensate, give it a bit more juice. Very simple. What's interesting most of all is might be when I spend my time alone, because I would use the different display devices, say my iPhone, to track what people are saying when I broadcast, or even to see myself seeing out there, which is kind of weird. But in a way, it removes you from the situation. And I like that idea because you felt like God in a way. You are watching yourself from a third person's perspective, which is rather unique. In this situation here, you see me attending a conference. I put this sign because I didn't want to scare people off, but maybe I did, I don't know. But the whole idea here is that I realized what I was doing in this case was that as I was mixing with people, there were people that couldn't attend this conference that I was at. And so they could see through my eyes what was going on. And I think one of my friends said this really incredulous line. He said, "Behind my one eye are 1,000 more." I became a medium in a very spiritual, religious kind of way. I became this medium who could then take all these questions that they had, that, I became this telepresence for them. And I became possessed in a way by them. And I would ask their questions that they couldn't ask. I would ask it on their behalf and relate to them. I became this human platform in a way. Okay? So it was pretty interesting. Of course, all this material creates bulk. And then you need to figure out a better way to sort this material, filter it. We don't live in a society of information overload. We live in a society where we have problems filtering the information. Information overload has always existed. Okay? In this case here, I use this example where Vidler is a video service that lets me annotate certain points of my the experience with little text or even video within video. So I could then track key milestones or key moments in my life. Okay? In this case, the GPS receiver also lets me know what I was doing when, and I would then annotate it just to give it more clarity. But combined with video, I could know exactly what I was doing, where I was at. So you have an immense amount of information that's being collected by this backpack that I could process later on if I want to. Okay? Of course, I did it for fun. I enjoyed it. I wanted to explore this whole notion of feedback loops ever since I saw this movie, Strange Days, where you could transfer experiences from one another using mini discs. Explore that movie if you can. It was a movie that was just before the year 2000, Strange Days. There's another movie called Blair Witch Project, which surprisingly is actually technological because there was a point in that movie where the friends were telling the camera girl that she should stop using the camera because she's so removed from the situation by viewing everything through the camera. And there was also a news incident that happened not too long ago about a JetBlue plane having the landing gears broken and it couldn't land properly. But what was unique about that JetBlue plane was that it had live news video for every passenger. And there was a helicopter that was following the plane as it went down. And so passengers could see themselves going down. And so this was very weird because there's a calming effect on the passengers as they realized that they were about to possibly face death. They were seeing themselves from the third person's perspective. It removes them. So there is this calming effect that it has. It's pretty interesting. The media picked it up. They were very interested in all these notions that I was exploring. I did it for about a year. And it was also written in a book about the idea of what if we actually had the ability to search our lives? What if we could never forget? Okay. What you see here is a screenshot of the amount of information that I've collected. And this is where it really starts to break down. At some point, because I'm not a programmer, because I'm not an engineer, everything that you see here is handmade, in a sense. It had to be hand annotated. It was very laborious. Perhaps it should even be considered a work of art. I don't know. But this is the calculation that you would make if you were to record your entire life. If we lived an average of 600,000 hours in a lifespan, that's about 76 years old. Okay? We then look at how 1 hour video on a DVD would take up about 2.5 gigs. It means that your total life would take up about 1,500 terabytes over there. Okay? All right, so I had banks of hard drives. They're cheap, you know, and you can store them online too. And now with video codecs making videos really small, you know, it's really no issue at all. But there is. The problem is that sometimes Google's cloud servers go down. Sometimes your own hard drives go down. And in this case, all my hard drives crashed. So I lost my whole life in that moment. So I guess the moral of the story is that while I picture this, and this was a photo taken back in '98 in MIT, I pictured this as the future when I was a kid, and it's not happening. The reason why it's not happening is because it is happening, it's just that we don't see it anymore. You don't see it on us anymore. This little device was a recent acquisition, for instance. This is a look-see. And with this single device to the iPhone, I don't need this whole setup anymore. It just beams it straight to the phone and beams it right up. So I can totally take advantage of all that I've been trying to do in one fell swoop. So there are these advancements that are happening, and soon our glasses, there are already cameras in your video sunglasses and you know, regular glasses. You can take videos and all that. So it's really no issue at all. It's all miniaturizing. And I think the point that I'm trying to stress here is that I was trying to reach this realm where what would happen. I was trying to figure out what was happening if I were to immerse myself online and if I were to put my whole life online. But I realized that when I lost everything, that this sense of weightlessness was actually a very positive, this enlightenment that I felt. I felt like I didn't have to bear the weight anymore. So the funny thing about this whole story that I'm trying to tell you might be a bit weird, but it's nice to forget. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay? So that's the end of my story. Thank you.